Hey everybody, this is Renessa Bowley Lane and I want to welcome you to Creating Your Perfect Work. If you follow my work, then you know I am all about helping you to discover, design, and get highly paid doing work you love, whether that means radically changing careers, launching a business, or bringing a big idea to life. And so we are in the midst of a special series on how to overcome overwhelm and create more time, space, and focus to get highly paid doing work you love. And so I'm super excited about this conversation because today we are going to get our acts together, literally and figuratively. And here's why. I think there's something to be said about the feeling of kind of incompleteness and the broken promises that we have to ourselves. And there's for a lot of us that are listening in, there's things that you've wanted to do forever. It could be little things, hobbies you wanted to take up, projects you wanted to, finish, little things, resolutions that you needed to keep. But then there's the bigger things, like actually doing what it takes to get highly paid doing work you love, which is what we're talking about here. It could be cherishing the people that you love in your life in the way that's meaningful. It could be, just having the kind of impact and the influence that you want in your life. Like those are the bigger things that oftentimes get undone. And a lot of times it has to do not so much with time, but with the choices that we make. And so today's guest is going to really help us figure out how to make better choices to get more of what we want in our work and life. And so I'm really, really excited about that. One thing I love is frameworks. Like sometimes prescribing, steps doesn't work, but if you understand a framework, you can figure out how to adopt that framework for your life, right? And when we think about time, there's tons of frameworks, 7 habits for effective people, there's systems, there's planning, there's this, that, and the other. All of them work, but not all of them work for you. And so what I'm delighted about today is that I get to introduce you to another framework that you get to try on for size, and you get to, you get to figure out what fits for me and what can I adopt and how can I have a richer, more fuller, more meaningful life and work and all that other good stuff. So the gentleman that is sharing the screen with me is Jones Loflin. And Jones is the author of the book, Juggling Elephants. I want to make sure I say the tagline right. Be the ringmaster of your work and life. It's a book about one man's struggle to find solutions for the problem of having too much to do. And I think we can all, relate to that. Jones is internationally recognized. He's a speaker, he's an author, he's a corporate trainer. He's got over 25 years of experience, which you would never believe by looking at him because he's amazing. And he's helped countless people around the world to really gain the confidence in their ability to succeed in work and life. So that's all the buttoned up stuff, right? That's the bio stuff. But let me tell you what I really think about this man. And what I think about this gentleman. I'm going to call him a gentleman because you are from the South, right? Is it North Carolina? Where's home for you?
That is correct. Yes,
it is North Carolina. And so the term gentleman is apropos. But what I think about Jones is he is salt of the earth. And there are some folks listening in, you are, listening from Australia, you're listening from the UK, so you may not be familiar with the term salt of the earth, but salt of the earth is just good people. And Jones is just good people. And the interactions that we've had with one another, like I'll follow him to the moon and back. I think he's awesome. And so, yes, you're going to get great strategies and you're going to learn from him. But my hope is that you'll also feel from Jones that it's okay. Wherever you are in the circus of your life, there are ways that you can tweak and begin to really achieve more and enjoy more in your work and life. And so I hope that you have the same experience with him. I'm confident you'll have the same experience with him that I've had with him. So with that said, I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you for being a part of our conversation, and I look forward to pitching and catching with you.
Oh, Renessa, what a warm, kind introduction. I'm just blown away. And let me say up front that the feeling is so mutual. When you and I talked the first time, I'm like, this person has their heart in the right place, and I love working with people who got the heart in the right place. We can figure the other stuff out if your heart's in the right place, And the other thing I would say, just starting out, is that please know that I too don't have it all figured out. In fact, I say to people, when I have it all figured out, I'll be dead and it won't matter.
Yeah.
You know, and so I love learning. And so, you know, I love your idea about frameworks, and I'm always testing out other ones for different things, whether it be leadership or focus and different things like that. And so again, I'm just thrilled to be with you today and offer some thoughts that hopefully help your the folks who are listening to be able to get to those things that are most important, professionally or personally,
Yeah,
whatever it might be.
absolutely. So let's dig in.
Yes.
So just so you know, I read Jones's book. So, and I can't wait. I have to take my time to make sure I leave a review on Amazon. But I read the book. I literally read it in an afternoon. I carved out some time, sat out in the sun, and had a good go with it. So the questions that I'm asking in my perspectives, they're real, because I actually value what he shared, and I encourage everyone, if you have the opportunity, to go and pick it up. But now that I'm off my soapbox, you often say that you don't teach people to manage their time. Instead, you teach them to manage choices. Tell us what you mean by that, because I think that's an interesting way to couch it.
Yeah. I guess the short answer would be a quote from Charlie Gilkey, and I probably won't get it right, but who said that schedules can be managed, money can be managed, and I think he said relationships can be managed, but he said time can only be accounted for. And you know, and I think that's where I come from. And when I read that, I'm like, yeah, that's what I think. But you know, if you think about it, is that we really don't manage the time. Time is a constant. It's always moving. And the only thing we can do is account for the choices we made in that time that we had. An example that probably all of us can understand. You get your credit card statement and you look at the bill and you go, you know, and then you go, how did it get to be that much? And then you start, what do? You start going through line by line, looking at the choices you made that cause it to get to that number. And I think it's the same thing with our time, is that it's, if we'll stop and begin to assess how we're making choices, what choices we're making, it begins to tell us why we aren't, you know, starting that job we really love, or why we aren't building the relationships we really want to build, because we just aren't making the choices that are going to get us there.
Got it. Well, let's talk about that. Because you're right with the credit card statement. Well, it's funny. My husband and I, we go through it all the time. He is the numbers, the buttoned up guy, the budget guy. I'm the one that, you know, flies a little close to the sun. And so he's always like, what the hell happened? Yeah. But I'm curious, how do people typically make choices with their time? I mean, you interacted with thousands of people across the years, and I'm sure there's patterns there. But what's the inherent problem in how we naturally make choices?
Wow, what a great question. I think the first thing is that, and we hear it, this is not anything from me, we've been hearing it for decades, is that people make choices based on the urgent and not the important.
Okay.
It's the notification on your phone, it's the screaming child, it's the coworker who needs something right now. We just really do. We don't stop and go, what's the most important, you know, activities for me to put in my day. We think more around, what have I got to get done? What's screaming at me? The squeaky wheel type of thing.
Yeah.
And the inherent problem, I think, in that is that the things that are really important don't scream at us.
Yeah.
They don't call for our attention. For my health, one of the things that I'm really trying to work on right now is my health. I'm 55 years old, I think. Yeah, 55 years old. And I know that I need to be taking even better care of my health than I am. I'm not really necessarily having any symptoms that say I should. So it's real easy to not make the choice to take better care of myself. But if I think longer term and, okay, what's really important, then I start going, yeah, I do need to be making better choices with my physical health and my diet, my exercise, my stress levels, if you will. So I just think the big challenge that we all face is that we just focus on what's right in front of us, what's making the loudest noise, and we don't stop to go, is that really the most important thing to be focusing on?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think what screamed out to me in reading your book was this realization that it's actually impossible to get everything done. Like, I think, and maybe many women that are listening in, when you don't get stuff done, you think, well, I should have been able to get it all done. either what's wrong with me or what, whatever. But it was the realization that actually no, and not recognizing that there are so many things that are on my radar screen. A lot of things that I've obligated myself to, a lot of expectations that either other people have of me or that I have of myself, that should not actually be on the radar screen, or they shouldn't be on the radar screen at that moment in time, right? And so this idea of, if I make the right choices, then my time will take care of itself. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is how do you think about the choices that you make such that you're making the right choices at the right time to get the right things done in the right order, right? And so Juggling Elephants, the book, is this metaphor of the 3-ring circus. And, the book is based on 3 rings of your life and all of that. And so what I struggled with in the book was, I was like, 3 rings? I got hella rings. Like, where did he come up with just 3 rings? And so I'm curious if you could explain the metaphor.
Sure.
Because there are some folks I've been to the circus a couple times, maybe there's some who've never been to the circus, but it's an interesting metaphor. But if you can explain the metaphor, and then even why everything boils down to those 3 rings. Because I was like, I got hella rings. He's missed the point. So explain that.
Oh, I love that, Vanessa. That's beautiful. And yeah, I have to tell you, just right up front, we had someone reach out to us right after Juggling Elephants came out, and it was a stay-at-home mom. And her comment was the same as yours. She goes, my home's a ring, my kids are a ring, and the reality is that you can have as many rings as you want, as long as you recognize that you have limited time and energy spread across those rings. So now back to the metaphor for just a moment. The metaphor is that you need to manage your work and life like it's a circus, and that means that you have rings. We'll leave it at how many, but you have rings, and you have a ring master, and that ring master is responsible for making sure the right acts are in the right ring at the right moment. You have performers in your circus, people you have expectations of, your children, your life partner, your coworkers, your friends, community members. You have expectations of all of them, and they are considered performers in your circus, just like you're a performer in their circus. You have an audience. An audience has expectations of you, and how are you doing, playing to your audience, and what does your audience expect of you? And it goes back to that great stuff you talked about a moment ago about being realistic about that. And the whole idea is that you really do, we believe, I say we because Todd Music is my co-author with the book, we believe that you have 3 key rings in your life. You've got a work ring, a self ring, and a relationship ring. And if I were to ask the group right now, if we were in a live event, if I said to them, which one of those 3 rings is most important? It'd be interesting. Some people would raise their hand and say work is. Some people would say, oh, it's relationships. And some people would say self. And then I'd go, who's right? Well, the reality is that the circus teaches that all 3 rings are important. And if you neglect one, the circus knows it's going to impact the performance, the success of the circus, because the other 2 aren't going to be able to be as effective as they should be. And so the reality of the model, if you will, the framework, is that we've got to become more mindful that all 3 rings are important, and how do I invest time in each one of them when I need to, so that I don't negatively impact my performance in one of the other 2.
Yeah. It's interesting because I want to chat a little bit about the conundrum that I had about the number of rings that you had in this book. And I had to resolve that, because I was like, can I follow the framework if I feel like at the premise something is off for me? Not that it's off, period. And the conclusion I came to is like, everything really does kind of boil down to self, to relationships or to work. And even the extra rings, whether it's my role at the PTA or, whatever, all these other extra things, if I trail it back, it's going to come back to one of those 3. And what was interesting about recognizing that is that when I start to think about the value of my self ring, or the value of my relationship ring, or the value of my work ring, then I was able to determine, do I want these pieces actually to be a part of that? Like, is that an important part of how I define what success looks like for me in that ring? And so recognizing that the ring can get really crowded when you start adding all kinds of other pieces into it. And then that affects the decision making as well. And so for me to be able to boil it down to those three helped me to start canceling out things or delaying or deferring or saying, you know what, right now, that's not an important, that's not going to be one of the acts that we'll talk about in a moment that I pull into the ring, because that's when I define success in that space, this ain't it. Or when I define the purpose of that space, this ain't it. So it was really helpful to kind of boil things and distill. So my hobbies, my spiritual life, all of those things have a place in self or someplace else. And then I'm able to kind of categorize what's the value of those elements in my life. So that piece of it was helpful. But the question that I have for you, and you talked about it a little bit, but I think the challenge for a lot of people is that we can focus on one ring at the expense of the other areas that matter, right? So, you know, if I could just get my business off the ground, if I could just get promoted to VP, if I could just get the, you know, if I could just, you know, make it through whatever stage of, you know, life, get the kids off to college or whatever the milestone happens to be, if I could just get to whatever this milestone is, then I'll have I'll focus on the marriage, or then, you know, we'll reconnect, or, you know, once the kids are out of the house, then we'll, you know, find our love again, whatever the thing happens to be. But you say that that approach doesn't work. Tell us why.
Yeah, great question. First of all, because if you think about the circus, as I said earlier, the circus knows that all three rings are important for the success of the performance. And if you think of performance as our life success, our goals, our purpose, those kinds of things, what happens in those situations where we neglect one of our other rings is that we don't believe that you can be as effective in the ring that you're in. For example, if you begin neglecting relationships with your life partner, significant other, or even your children, we know that when you're at work trying to really hammer out that stuff, your brain and your heart is going, ooh, guess what? You know, you're neglecting your children, or you're neglecting your life. And so then mentally we're drained, or emotionally we can't be as present as we'd like to be with our work, because we know we're not taking care of something somewhere else. If you're not taking care of your own, self ring, again, you can't be as effective. You're not going to be getting the sleep you need. You're not going to be getting the exercise you need to be fully functional at work. Another example coming from the circus is, if you think about the circus, for those who've ever been, typically in a circus, you never saw three major acts in a major act in every ring at one time. In other words, you might see a small act appearing in one ring. Another ring might even be dark, and another one might have, my favorite act, the motorcycle ball of death, all this stuff going on. Come back in 5 minutes, that ring that was really active might have a dog act or something. The one in the center might be a trapeze act, and now the one on the left or the other one might be some clowns. The circus knows it has to maximize its resources. And what I'm saying, Renessa, is I think when people start saying, oh, I've got to focus on building that business and I'll do that other stuff later, sure, that may take precedent in your life right now, trying to get started, but you can't completely neglect those other two rings. You may not be doing as much in them, but you still got to give some time and energy to them to be able to fuel yourself, if you will, to be able to be your best in that other ring.
Yeah, I really think that this is an important point for two different reasons. I think on the one side, it's counterintuitive to think that because this conversation is around the premise of getting highly paid to do work that you love.
Exactly.
And for some people, they are making this major career shift, or they may be, stepping into entrepreneurship or bringing some big idea or mission to life, or you just might be at a stage where you're exactly in the industry space you want to be, and you're trying to crank and get to whatever the level of success you're looking for. And I think it's counterintuitive for folks to think that, no, I just need to put my nose to the grind and focus here, and not recognize that the other rings of your life are assets to you being able to get there. Like it's not a liability. It's not my kid. It's funny because before we started our recorded conversation, my daughter's home, school's closed for the week due to COVID. She's 3 years old. And so she has zero concept of mommy's working, she's banging on the door and, the whole nine. That could be considered a liability, but in reality, making the investments, even though it feels like it's taking me from the work,
Right.
actually creates a fuel, for the work. But it's really, really counterintuitive. And for some people, it requires a lot of faith, actually, to even be able to do that, to put a hard stop on your day and get the rest that you need, or put a hard stop on your weekend so that you could focus time with someone that you love. And I think to Jones's point, the other thing for high achieving women is we think we can be at level 10 in all arenas all the time.
Yes.
And the reality is that something always has to bleed, right? So if you are at a stage of life where, work is the primary or the goal is the primary, something else might bleed. The house might not be as clean, or it might get outsourced, and you might get a cleaning, whatever. Something has to bleed, but it doesn't bleed out. You can't bleed out.
Yes.
I have personally been guilty of allowing things to bleed out, and then wonder why the more I grind, I'm still not getting where I want to be. And it's not about grinding more. It's actually about shifting the focus to other parts of the ring that then become fuel. Yeah. And so I think it's a really important point for people to understand, because I think it goes so against our nature. And it certainly goes against our fear mechanism to think that sometimes you got to slow down so that you can speed up.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I took from that point.
Oh, beautiful. Why do you need me? You could just do this yourself. I love what you said. Well, it is.
But really, this is what I took from your work. So
thank you. I love what you said. I mean, especially in the sense of, you go back to the circus for a moment. Circus acts only last for a certain amount of time, and then they stop. And then a new act shows up. I'll talk to some people who are overloaded, and I'll say, okay, when are some things going to change when you won't have to put your nose to the grind at work? And they'll go, I don't know. I'm like, that's not acceptable. Yeah. You're the ringmaster. You may not be able to control everything, but when can you put that stop? Like you said, when can you bring something to a stop to invest more in relationships or in yourself? And that's why I talk to people when I'm coaching about, you need to have something you look forward to on the weekend. You need to have something to look forward to at the end of the day, for that matter. Is that you can't just say, well, 3 weeks from now, I'm going to, do something for myself. No, if you're really pounding it out at work, you need to have something you look forward to every evening. It may just be something for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but knowing that you've got an act that's going to show up in that other ring that's going to nurture you is so critical. Renessa, and I love the way you described it.
Yeah, you say that, I forget how you said it, and I wrote it down somewhere and I should have highlighted it, but you talked about the whole success of the circus, and in this case, the circus is our life, is wholly dependent on the ringmaster, which means that the hot mess of my life, or if someone else is listening, it is wholly and completely my issue. It's my fault. It's something that I get to change and I get to influence, meaning that it's not the outside circumstances that are the problem. And everybody's got circumstances. And especially in this season globally, there's lots of circumstances, and they're hard circumstances, and they're challenging, and they are pressing. So the circumstances are real. And I want to trivialize the circumstances. Right. However, the buck always stops with what parts of these can I control? And I think part of the message is recognizing there are elements that I can control. And in your book, you say that there are two key steps required to make things go smoothly, kind of in the circus of our life. The first thing that you say is to have a plan, which again sounds trite and so like worn, but I want to talk about it because I think it's very profound. And so I'd love for you to expound a little bit about it, on what you mean and why that is actually critical. And then we're going to kind of pitch and catch on it a little bit.
Oh, sure. Yeah. The whole idea of a plan, let's go back to choices. We started our conversation today talking about we can't manage our time, we manage our choices. And that's what a plan is. It's here are the choices I'm going to make today. They're going to help get me to the outcome I want. And let's be honest, a lot of people don't do that. They start their day checking their phone or their tablet, responding to crises, urgent needs, letting other people pour into their lives with their positivity or negativity or somewhere in the middle. They don't make the choice to say, my day's going to start with listing some things I'm grateful for, taking the time to read some things that'll help me grow professionally, getting exercise. That's what I mean by a plan is planning ahead to say, this is what I want this day to look like. And here are the choices I'm going to need to make to get there. Now they're going to change. And one of the things that we say in the book and in the training is that, you may be the ringmaster, but as you said, you're not in control of everything.
Yeah.
Do you have control over?
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget working with a group of nurses, and I was talking, unpacking this framework of juggling elephants, and one of the nurses came up to me during a break and said, Jones, you don't understand. 100% of my day is planned. I can't create this lineup you're talking about. And I looked at them and I thought, well, I think they're right. But I just kind of stood there for a minute and finally my feeble brain went, would you say 100% of your day is planned for you? And she said, well, surely 80%. I said, okay, how are you choosing to be the ringmaster of the 20% that you do have control over?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who are listening, are thinking about the things they want to do, things they want to change, and they've got these huge goals of how they want to make this seismic shift in their life. And they may not be the ringmaster that can do that right now. It may be more of, where can I plan differently for the 20% that's within my control, or the 30%? That's where I encourage people to start. And then as they get that foundation, then they can make other changes.
Yeah. I really like this point again, because on the surface, it can seem, you can miss it because you hear people talk about make a plan, make a plan, make a plan. But what you say in the book, you say that most acts follow each other in a well-developed order that is already known to work. The ringmaster simply follows the plan. And so kind of the aha that came to me again is that, on the surface, it's basic, but it's quite profound, because most of us don't have a plan. Like a workout program is not a plan. A vision board is not a plan. Like even sometimes the strategic business plan that you kind of create for your business idea is not necessarily a plan. It's a concept for a lot of people. So the plan takes the decision making out of the process. But I think a lot of the stress comes in the decision making, right? And so I talked about my daughter being home from school, and we got the notice late, sorry, too bad, so sad, school's going to be closed, the kid got COVID, so we're shutting everything down and disinfecting, and everybody get your test next week before you come back, kind of thing. And so it's like you got a whole week of your kid being home, and I've got help. My mother-in-law is here, she's there to support, but I have a plan. And so the kids run amok because there's no plan. And so at school, there's this structure. This is what they do from 9 to 9:30. There's a plan. There's nap time and snack time and, all of this. And I recognized that if this week was going to go smoothly, I needed to have a plan for how she was going to experience her time, because then that would impact how I, as a working mother, was going to experience the day. And I think we do that sometimes for things we enjoy, but for the stuff that we don't enjoy, that's hard for us, if relationships are hard for you, or the interactions with your spouse, or your parenting, like, do you have a plan for how you're going to re-engage the person that you love? Do you have a plan? Like, what does it look like, so that then you're not trying to make all these decisions in the moment? Do you have a meal plan for what you're going to cook for the week? So you have to think about it every day. Like,
yes, that's exactly the example I was going to go to, is that, so many people, if you ask them, what's the number one thing you think about as you're, shutting down work for the day? So, what's for dinner? Yeah. I mean, and if you have a plan, it takes all that emotion out of it, whether it's meal prep on the weekend or choosing a theme night or whatever you do. I mean, and then it becomes automatic. And then all those brain cells get used for things like, how could I create a business where I can thrive and deliver my best work? How can I improve my relationship with my spouse, instead of saying, do I need to stop by the grocery store on the way home, or do we have something in the freezer? I mean, you're exactly right. Plans plans won't get you exactly where you want to go, but they get you started.
Exactly.
And they give you the next step, which is so critical. Yeah, I love what you said.
So the piece that I want to drive home for folks that are listening, again, it seems like such a simple piece. And I'm the kind of person, I'm an all or nothing chick. Like, it's got to be great or we're not starting, which is a recipe for it never gets done
Yep.
in some areas. And so I am learning to be very imperfect in the plan, because at least if I got something, I got somewhere, right? And so we had a little sort of plan for yesterday. Today we'll have a better plan. But when you look at the different rings in your life, let's say you're, because I took some notes on, let's say it's your relationship ring. Your relationship ring might be your marriage. It might be your kids. It might be your extended family. It could be your friends. Your relationship rings are those colleagues, maybe the collaborators, the folks that you're trying to build relationships with for your business. Like, those are all parts of your relationship ring. What's the plan that you have to engage? Because then that determines what you do and what you don't do with your time. With your self ring, right? That could be your hobbies, your self. Like, I have an inner Beyonce like everybody else. I wanted to be on Solid Gold, when I was a little kid. Like, I've always had this inner person who wanted to dance, but I have no plan for how to ever make time for that expression. And there's a creative element in that I actually think would really benefit in every other area of my life. But the challenge is, well, what's the plan? What's my plan in my relationship with God? If that's important to you, is it fly by night, or do you actually have something such that you take all the decision making out? And yeah, you got to be flexible with it. It doesn't always work, but it's really thinking about those different aspects. What's the plan for your work? If you've decided that you want to be out of this job and that you want to create something and get out there in the marketplace, well, then the plan will dictate what things you take on the job and what things you don't, because it may not fit in I'm gonna stop. Because I think this leads into the second step, which you say is the ringmaster always reviews the next act before bringing it into the ring. And I want you to share with that, because I think that has a lot to do with whatever plan you have, and then determining what things do I take on, what things do I take off, what things do I defer, have a lot to do with how you review the acts or the activities or the decisions that you're making around your time.
Yeah. Great point. Is that, it's that stopping. It's the thing that so many people want to do. They just don't, they want to keep going. It's hard to make a course correction if you're driving, if you won't stop and repunch coordinates into your phone, or, as we old people do, look at a map, whatever it might be. But, you got to stop. And then you say, is this choice going to take me closer to my daily outcome or the weekly outcome I'm looking for? Is this choice going to improve my relationship? Whatever it is that you're looking to do with that next act or activity, it's just stopping to say, is this what I should be focusing on right now? Instead of just engaging in it and then finding out 30 minutes later, oh no. I mean, an example, social media. The ringmaster reviews the act before bringing the ring. Oh, I think I'm just going to check my Instagram feed. And, that's so dangerous. Is that because, you're not stopping to think, okay, is this a good use of my time? Maybe it is. Maybe you just want to blow off a little bit of steam or something. But, it's then 45 minutes later, you look up and go, crap, I spent 45 minutes on Instagram. A better approach by a ringmaster would say, you know what, I'm going to spend 5 minutes, or when I finish work today, or when I've got the kids to bed, or so, you put something in place that gives it a little more of a limiting factor than just simply doom scrolling. And then, finding 20 minutes later, you've wasted all this time. Ringmasters just stop and say, is this the right ring for the right act right now? And then how long should it last? Just some beginning points, I think.
Yeah. I think I think it's critical to be very discerning about what we say yes to. And by yes, I don't mean like someone asks you to do something and you say, but what you say, anything that you choose to do, you're saying yes to. whether it's looking at social media. I'm the person who always goes to CNN and I'm like, what happened? What mess just happened? But I think part of it becomes a distraction because you just want, I just need to hear something like crazy
Yeah.
to just distract my mind. But I think the point is we are often thinking about acts that don't belong in the ring right now. And for those of you who are listening, I really encourage you to read the book to even understand the concepts of the rings and the acts, because you might not totally get it in our conversation, but you'll get it in the book. But a lot of times we are thinking about stuff that really has no bearing on the outcomes that we need either for this day, for this week, for this month. And then our minds become so cloudy with all of these stressors of things that we need to do or that are on our mind, because we didn't have a plan and a place to put them. So if I have the plan, then I might know that this thing you're asking me to do, I will do it, but I'm actually not going to do it, touch it, look at it, research it, or anything until next week. But there's this fear if I don't have a plan that I'm going to miss it somehow, or I'm going to fail you, or I'm going to do whatever, because I don't know where it belongs in my world. So if I actually take the time to figure out where the heck am I going in my relationship ring? What do I want in my relationship with my spouse? What's my goal for us for this quarter? And if it's just for us to have more of a connection time, that means that then there's certain acts, things that I need to do on a regular basis in order to make that part of my ring to fortify it. So that may mean, yes, you know what, we're going to spend 15 minutes a day, just at the end of the day, just to connect and be like, how are you doing? Or that means that on Saturday, this is what we're going to like. Then I know these are the things that I need to plan. Otherwise, this really important part of my life never gets the attention, or it's getting attention at the expense of something else that might be more of a priority in the moment. Yeah. So it's a matter of just evaluating, is this the right area that I'm focusing on right now? And if it is, what should I be doing in this area right now to get what I said I wanted, not what I didn't want? So practical example for some of you who are in the workspace. If you are at a place where you are trying to do a side hustle in a business, your career now your job becomes the fuel for the side hustle. It means you do a good job, you deliver, you do all of that because you have a responsibility there. But that over delivering and that over performance and that reaching for the next ladder, rung in the ladder, doesn't make sense if you have determined that the side hustle is your future. Exactly. And so we don't think that way. So we're still trying to be 150% in a job that we don't have to be 150%. 100 will do. And so therefore the side hustle never gets off of the ground because the choices we make real time keep us at 150% over here for something we said we didn't want. And I see it happen countless times of women who come through our programs and they're struggling with the thing that they've identified as their perfect work. Why? Because they let all of these my ministry, my this, all these responsibilities, you've made the wrong choice. You're focusing on the wrong, you're in the same ring. It's all about the same ring, but your actions are not going to get you the purpose that you said that you wanted. So those two questions about the plan, about what ring you should be in, about what action you should be taking in the moment, those two questions, if you just master how to answer those questions, there goes a whole lot of time that you weren't able to find, right? Yeah. And so as we start to wrap up, there's a question that I wanted to ask, because, and I don't even know if this was in the book. I think I found it somewhere else as I was learning about you. But we talked about in the beginning this idea of not managing time. And in fact, if you think about it, trying to manage time is a waste of time, because time is going to tick, 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 tick. Is always going to have its 24 hours, not really a whole lot to manage there. But there are other resources that you say are better for us to manage. And if we manage those resources well, then time will take care of itself. I'd love for you to talk about some of those. Because I think it was really key, and I think it's a really interesting perspective to have.
Yeah, wow. There's so many. And I think, one of the things you talked about questions a moment ago, I think asking that question of yourself, what's the resource that's most limiting you right now? And it can't be time.
Yep.
Don't give me time. And then people will begin to say things like schedule, energy, expectations of others. The environment is just sucking me dry right now because of what's going on around me. So I think it is important to ask yourself, what is it that I need to manage better? And I think for many people, Renessa, I think it is energy. And I think we got it when we think in terms of energy. I think we got to think physical, mental, emotional, and relational. And of course, there's spiritual as well. I think the big three are physical, mental, and emotional. And because for many of the people who you work with, that they are, like you said, they're expending so much of that out, and they're not replacing it. They're not choosing to manage themselves in a way so that when they have a mentally draining day, they're not doing anything the evening to help replace that mental energy. If they've got a tough conversation they got to have with people at work, they need a lot of emotional energy to be able to manage that conversation well. They're not starting their day in such a way that they have a surplus of emotional energy. They're drained by the time they get to the office or in the workspace, and then they can't have the conversation they want to have with that coworker. So I think, to me, that's one of the things that we've all, self included, have to do a better job of, is managing that energy so we're ready to deliver at the moment we need to. Let me throw in one thing. James Clear, who wrote a great book, Atomic Habits, you may have read it. I love what he says in there. One of the questions we need to ask ourselves in the morning is, what do I need to optimize for today? I love that question. Is it going to be a physically demanding day? Okay, that tells you how you better structure the first part of your day. If it's going to be mentally demanding, it's a different answer. If it's going to be emotionally demanding, then what do you need to do to have yourself ready to be able to be in optimum condition when that calls on you. So I think energy is one of them. Schedule is another one. Not time, but schedule. Looking at your schedule, and like you said earlier, as you look at the last week and last month, and you look at the activities that are in your schedule, are they helping you become the person you want to be? And if you're not seeing a lot of activities that are, what needs to change in your schedule? What do you need to be doing differently? And many times it's not major shifts. Sometimes it's just, okay, where's that 30 minutes? I defy anyone when I start coaching with it. I say, okay, we're going to find you 30 extra minutes in your day, to work on this, or the space of 30 minutes. Now, no, John, you don't understand. My schedule's packed. And it is hilarious. By the time we've kind of went through their schedule, it's not hard to find 30 minutes. I mean, you take out a few minutes of social media over here, a little extra socializing over here, a little, just not even focusing, just kind of letting the moments tick by between meetings. There's your 30 minutes. It's looking at that schedule and how do I need to manage that more effectively, I think, is key. A third one I'll share, then Renessa, you may have some that you want to talk about, is people. People are our greatest resource. They're our greatest source, for me anyway, my greatest source of strength. The relationships with my family, with my friends, with colleagues in this business. I mean, they're huge. And I think sometimes we have to manage our expectations of what that looks like with other people. And I think that comes with being, good communicators. You've talked a lot today about people who want to figure out what their perfect work looks like, and it's not going to be with this organization maybe for another 6 months or a year. They're going to moving away. Are you having the conversations with the people in your life who can support you? Are you saying to that partner, for the next month, this is what I need? And when that month is over, this is what it's going to look like. But I really need this. It's asking your friends to support and encourage you. And Renessa, I firmly believe we rob people of the joy of supporting us when we feel like we've got to take it all on ourselves. And I'm going to be sexist for a moment. Working women are the worst ones for that, of feeling like the whole world is on their shoulders. And I'll admit, culture has put too many expectations on so many of them. I just think it's important that they reach out, because I am yet to see that when someone reaches out and says, hey, I need some help here. I'm trying to get here and I could really use somebody just to walk along beside me. I just see other people go, oh,
Me?
You
That's
won't
so
meet it.
hard.
Yes, exactly. And so that's what I just think is so critical. It's reaching out to those people in your life who will support, encourage, guide, kick you when you need it, mentally or emotionally, to say, hey, you need to keep moving in that direction. I just think it's so important.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with all of those, and I'll list out before we finish the different elements, so that folks, if you're listening in, these are things that you can start to think about in your own area, because when you manage them well, it actually creates more time, right?
Exactly.
I'll touch on the energy just because it's so prevalent for me personally. I'm a morning person, like I'm a 5:30 or 6 o'clock, or like just clockwork. I'm just up. I'm naturally really sharp in the morning. You start messing around 3:30, 4 o'clock, it's starting to be a wrap,
That's
and
me. That's me.
it's starting to be a wrap, which means that everything takes longer then.
Yes,
And I made
yes,
the mistake,
yes.
even in preparing for my conversation with Jones. I was having a conversation with a girlfriend, and she called and she was like, it was maybe 4:30 going on 5 o'clock. And I sounded like it was 4:30 going on 5 o'clock. And she's like, oh, what's going on? She's like, and I said, I didn't manage my day well. I said, I'm preparing for this conversation tomorrow. This was the actual most important thing I had to do today. And I did all this other stuff today that was also important, but
Yeah.
not the most important.
Yes,
But
yes.
part of it was because I'm in a time zone difference. So the people who needed inputs from me are 3 hours ahead of me. So I needed to get them what they needed in order for them to do their job and me not be the bottleneck. But that meant that the most important thing that I needed my brain and my creativity for got pushed to the end, which meant it just took longer. It
Yeah,
was like
yeah,
this sludge, because
yeah.
my energy level is not the same. And
Mhm.
so we can't always control that,
Right.
but more times than not we can, if we're being thoughtful and we're being intentional and we're thinking ahead of that. There are things that could be adjusted. There's conversations and negotiations that could then happen with people in
Mhm.
order to make sure that I'm supported at the optimal time for my energy,
Yeah,
right? So I ended up doing things and taking a lot longer, and not wasting time, but spending more time, because
yeah.
my energy was misaligned with what
Mhm.
naturally works for me. And there are some people who are night owls, and then they
Yep.
just really crank at night. And so it's a completely different opposite effect for them. But I think that's key. The other piece that I'll close out with, as it relates to our conversation and what we manage, is expectations.
Yeah.
And I think managing expectations that we have of ourselves, particularly as women, I think our expectations can be so incredibly high for what we think we can accomplish. Like, again, when I went through the book, I was like, well, there actually is no way to do all of that. And the expectation that I should have been able to do all of that now creates all this other emotional drain, because
Yeah.
I'm fighting a problem that actually doesn't exist. And so for some of
Yeah.
us, what we think we can accomplish, we're always taught to raise your standard, raise your standard, raise your standard. And sometimes it's a matter of lowering the standard,
Yeah.
so that then I can consistently hit it, in
Yeah.
which case my standard might increase. But the
Mhm.
more times I don't fulfill the promise that I've made to myself, it erodes the trust that we have in
Yes.
ourselves. And then
Yes.
so there goes the dream, there goes the idea, there goes the big shift, there goes all of that, because we know that my word now has no value. I'm not
Mm.
going to hit the goal, I'm not going to hit the resolution, right? And so changing that expectation that I have of myself and the grace that I also give to others
Yes.
makes a big deal. And it doesn't mean that we don't show up in excellence.
Oh,
It may mean that we have a very realistic expectation of, can I really do that?
yeah.
The amount of time and energy and preparation that will go into me accomplishing this task, if I've told you I can do it in an hour, but it really actually takes 2.5, I
Mm.
have set myself up to fail every time, or I've set myself up to achieve under pressure and under
Mm.
duress. And
Mhm.
over time, that becomes very hard to sustain.
Oh,
Right. And so the
well said.
experience of our success is equally as important as the achievement of the success.
Mhm.
And so the expectations we set will determine whether or not this is a journey that I really enjoy, or whether this is a grind that I just have to willpower and push myself through. But you get to decide, how do I want to experience this?
Yeah.
And so having more grace and changing your expectation might give you the space in the room to create your perfect work with more joy and with more ease and with more flow and with more of all the warm and fuzzies that actually make life like worth living, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to kind of end
Mm.
and button up this part of the conversation. But what's really important for me is I want folks to be able to connect with you, Jones. I want them
Sure.
to be able to follow your work. I really have valued what I have learned from what you have. And again, everybody, y'all get the book. Just get the book. It's available in 14 countries, so get the book. And it's a really super easy read, a really simple metaphor. And if there's just one golden nugget that will transform how you show up in your world, it's totally worth it. But Jones also has a free gift for everyone that's listening in as a way of being able to stay connected to him. So I will allow you to kind of share that
Sure.
with the group, and we'll make sure to direct folks. You should see a description and a link and all of that on this page where the video is to be able to access. But Jones, if you'd like to just share with us what it is, and then we'll.
Sure. Absolutely. I'm excited. I created an article, 8 strategies to be the ringmaster of your perfect work, specifically for our conversation today. I knew the kinds of things we'd be talking about. And so if listeners want to go to jonesloflin.com/perfect work, and of course it's on your screen. If you go there, then you can sign up for my monthly tips and ideas and strategies, and I'll send you that resource of 8 strategies to be the ringmaster of your perfect work. Now, I've got something else I'm also doing. I'm really excited about it. One of my COVID projects early on was to develop an online course on based on juggling elephants. It's called Be on Purpose, and it is a fantastic course filled with lots of immersion activities, workbook, all types of exercises for you to really make sure that every day you're on purpose towards those outcomes that you're looking for. For everyone who signs up, you'll be entered into my drawing for 5 subscriptions to that online course. That's $139 value US for those of you listening internationally. But I'm excited about that because you're going to enroll in that course. You're going to be able to go wherever you need to focus on first. If it's purpose, you can start there. If it's schedule, you can start there. But I'm really excited, Vanessa, about providing these resources to all of those folks today who've said, yes, I want to create my perfect work, and where do I start?
Absolutely. Well, I'm delighted, and take advantage. If you're someone for whom choices has been a challenge, and I'm proud of lots of things that I have done in my life and continue to do, but choices and how I choose to spend my time and how I choose to invest my energy and all of those things, that's been a weak spot. And so for me, I can achieve, but the experience going through that has been rough. And that's a recipe for burnout. It's a recipe for a lot of things that are not intended in the road to success. And so if choices is an issue for you, get everything that Jones has to offer and re-listen to this conversation. And more importantly, get the book. Because I think just doing the interplay, it's a simple book, but doing the interplay will help you to kind of think about, how does this apply to me, and what types of choices am I making, and what performance do I want to create with this beautiful tapestry that is my own life. And I think that's the biggest gift that comes out of his content. And so with that, just want to thank you for your time. We're excited to both be here, and we'll see you guys on the other side. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.